To a regular city council meeting for the month of December. We will start off this evening with, if you all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You all be seated. Madam Clerk, if you call the roll, please.
Councilor Bouchard. Here. Mayor Boulay.
Here.
Councilor Champlin.
Here.
Councilor Cohen.
Here.
Councilor Grady Sexton. Here. Councilor Hirschlag.
Here.
Councilor Keach.
Here.
Councilor Kennison.
Here.
Councilor Kretovic.
Here.
Councilor Mattson. Here. Councilor Nyan.
He's excused.
Councilor St. Hilaire.
Here.
Councilor Shirtliff.
He's excused.
Councilor Todd.
Here.
And Councilor Warner.
Here. Great. Good to see everybody. First of all, let's thank Councilor Cohen for our beautiful poinsettias. But
Thank you.
we may want to put them on the floor so we can actually see each other.
It's a good idea.
Or maybe not.
I can barely see you.
Your choice. If you want to be seen, you may want to put them
Put in the, why don't we put in the front?
Yeah. Or put them in the front.
Oh, that's an idea.
Okay. While our resident florist is doing that, I'm going to ask for we have the minutes before us for November 13th, 2017.
Approval?
Fair motion. Motion made and seconded to approve the minutes of November 13th. Is there any changes, comments, questions?
Science experiment. Oh, I've got it a year.
So festive.
That's outstanding.
Beautiful now.
It's like Santa's elves.
Okay, we have the minutes, we have a motion for approval of the minutes for November 13th, 2017. Is there any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all ready for the question, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, motion's approved. That brings us to our resolution proclaiming December 2017 as the Capital Region Food Program Month, and we welcome our friends from the Capital Region Food Program. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening.
I am going to spare you the reading of the proc resolution, but I just wanted to ask you to please, just as you do every year, just kind of give us a little bit of an update of the food program and the things I always like you to touch upon, make sure that we reinforce that, one, it's a volunteer effort, it's no overhead, and of course, I think it's important to talk about the year-round effort as well,
Great.
if you wouldn't mind.
So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having us here, and members of the council, thank you. I'm Steve Paintshow, the chair of the board of the trustees of the Capital Region Food Program, and we're here for our 44th year of providing food at holiday time to members of our community, Concord and our 17 surrounding communities. And it's a all-volunteer effort, as I think you know. I'm actually going to turn it over to Maria, who knows the details, and she'll carry you.
That's why you're still married.
I think we'll probably, she's got about a 40-minute presentation.
I'll time it and see how fast I can be. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here again this year. This is the 44th annual Holiday Food Basket Project. Again, we're all volunteer. First year we did less than 100 families. This year we'll do over around 2,000 families in Concord and the surrounding communities. One of the things that's remarkable about this project, it is all volunteer, and we use 1,000 volunteers to accomplish it. It gives our volunteers the opportunity to give back to the community, which is important. While Holiday Food Basket Project is the most visible, our year-round distribution project has absolutely grown by leaps and bounds. When we started this program year-round in 1992, it was less than 10% of our budget. It is now somewhere around 48% of our budget. We have held firm on our holiday, which was something that was really remarkable when we were noting it the other day. The amount we spend on holiday has been about stable in the last 10 years because of the generosity through a lot of in-kind donations and foodstuffs. So we've been able to reallocate our dollars for the year-round, which becomes really important for those families in need throughout the year. We do it once a month. It's just-in-time operation. We purchase food and give it to the food pantry, soup kitchens, social service agencies. We don't compete with them. We support them because they do great work. One of the things that we have found in a lot of the research that we've looked at is New Hampshire is unique and Concord is very unique, that we work in collaboration and cooperation with one another. And so we maximize the limited resources that we have. So we are very grateful to the City of Concord for the continued support, and we hope you all have a wonderful holiday.
Excellent. But thank you both for the endless hours that you put into this, and to all the volunteers to really make it worthwhile. And the one point that you made that I didn't say is that you don't compete with the visiting, that you really do support them, and the families that you support in Concord are grateful as well. So thank you. And I think if you will go around, we may have some for you. Okay.
I have a contribution. Thank you. You get my canned foods tomorrow.
Really?
Wind guard.
Thanks a lot for your
See you on
work.
Friday.
Thank you.
I thought you were talking about me. That's right.
Thanks, Tori.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes. Okay, that brings us to item 7, which is a presentation by Unitil for the donation for the arena lighting and chiller projects. And we got Chip, and we got the Honorable Gary Miller. Mr. Chesley has to say, I apologize.
Two gentlemen with white beards, time of year, of giving, I guess.
Ho, 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 we are dissolved.
We did not rehearse this at all. Probably it's very evident as we move on.
You do
But in
come
any
bearing
case,
gifts.
good. So we're here, or Gary's here, to share with us a gift from Unitil. I think many of the councilors may know we've been on a long-term effort to reduce the energy that the arena consumes. When we first started the energy work with Siemens years ago, we were using upwards of 600,000 kilowatt hours of what you produce, and we're looking at using about 280, 290 in the coming year. So that's a significant reduction of energy. I wish I could do that with my teenage daughter. I'll be in touch after the meeting on
Good
tips
luck
for
with
that. But Gary does have a check for us in an amount of about $50,000, $40,000 towards the LED light improvements that we just recently completed, and $10,000 that goes to the new chiller that makes the ice. So I'll turn it over to good friend Gary.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here with you again. We were here a couple years ago for a presentation for the Audi. So try to keep this streak going and try to make it every year instead of every other year. There's plenty of money available for the municipality. We're very happy to help. We're very proud of the city and the job that they're doing and the initiatives they're taking. Thank you, Rob, for the work that you do in driving energy efficiency around the city. It's a great treat, and it's a real prize for me to be able to come and present checks like this. It speaks to the long-term stability that the city's looking for, and it's a great project. I think you've gotten a lot of accolades for the lighting that's in the rink now.
Right.
It's a good project and something we can repeat in other facilities. I think Dame School's next. The new community center is going to be next up on the hit list. So we're seeing good things happen, and we're very happy to support that. So that being said, understanding we're up against a very tight timeline.
Not at all.
This
You have as
particular
much time as
evening.
you wish. Does anybody have any questions before?
No.
See?
Don't want to compete with the fish.
Oh,
There you go.
still LeBron likes the size of those checks.
And we spoke that this is to the scale of the project. So if you get bigger projects, we can make bigger checks.
Is that the deal? You're right in the middle.
There we go.
Click it is.
I think he's papering the walls in the office. Your office.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. It takes us to our consent agenda. Nothing has been removed, as far as I know, unless somebody has anything right now. Seeing none, can we have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval.
Motion made, seconded to approve the consent agenda. Or is there motion made and seconded? Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll ready for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The consent agenda is adopted. Takes us to our public hearings this evening. And would anybody willing to have the first three items actually heard together, since they're all dealing with parking?
Yes,
Is that-
please.
That way a member of the audience can speak to any one of the three. And is that okay? All right, Madam Clerk?
The first is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title II Traffic Code, Chapter 18 Parking, Article 18-3 Parking Meters. And then there's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I General Code, Chapter 1 Government Organization for fees, fines, and penalties. And the third item is an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title II Traffic Code, Chapter 18 Parking, Article 18-2 Restricted Residential Parking Areas.
Mr. Manager.
And members of the council, you have in your information a 28-page report dated November 13th from the Parking Committee. You also have a supplemental report based on the assignments that you gave the Parking Committee to receive supplemental information. So you have a supplemental report of 6 pages dated December 11th, and you've received public testimony from Ms. Deborah Carley dated November 20th as part of your records. We weren't going to make any presentation because so many presentations have been made. And Mr. Walsh is actually here along with members of the Parking Committee to answer any questions you may have.
Perfect. Mr. Cohen, would you like to say anything before we start?
Well, thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
I do want to thank the members of the Parking Committee, Councilor Champlin from Ward 4 and Councilor Kinnison from Ward 6 and Councilor Todd from Ward 1 on this. It was a 3 to 4 year project, and what was really the key part of it is when we hired the consultants to come in and actually look at Concord itself and its parking issues. And it was really eye-opening. There was several public meetings, and hundreds of people got involved in it and gave us a very good idea of what's going on in Concord. And again, the two surprising things for me was that, again, that the issue about parking in Concord is not that we don't have parking spaces, it's just how it's allocated and how it's utilized, both public and private. The other one was I thought was kind of simple quirkiness, is that the naming of our parking garages was not really conducive for anybody coming into Concord, because they were named like Capitol Commons, and who knows what the Capitol Commons is. But so we renamed, that's one of the things we've done, is rename the parking garages so it's geographically people can find it. But the biggest thing that I got out of as chair of this is during this process, we found out what was the weaknesses in the parking fund and why it became that way. Also, the parking organization, the parking department's organization, and looking at, it was just years and years and years of tweaking and got us to where we were financially. Which was really nice because of the amount of public hearings we had and hundreds of citizens that came to these meetings in the last 3 to 4 years, that we came with, I feel, a very strong consensus from the committee of how to make the parking fund solid again, in the black, and also make the parking in Concord, not only downtown but neighborhoods, more efficient. So again, thank you guys for participating in this.
Perfect. With that, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to speak? Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Roy Schweiker, and by grouping them together, you get to listen to me for longer at one stretch. The first thing I want to say is, having read through the stuff, I'm surprised at a few of the things that seem to have slipped through. Like, I noticed our meter feeding ordinance forbids you from adding coins to the meter that will bring it up over the official time, but it doesn't prohibit you adding a dollar bill or a credit card or a cell phone or anything to bring it up over the appropriate time. So I wonder if perhaps someone should look into that. The ordinance only provides for fees based on your parking time. It doesn't say anything about adding fees for credit cards or cell phones or whatever. So perhaps it should be added in, that's part of the fee. It's the intent of the city council to add those fees to the parking fee rather than to give the people a break and take it out of the parking fee. I noticed the resident permit transferability 1822D. Nobody but a resident can use a resident permit. I think in the past, a lot of residents get them, and then if they have a guest, it's the guest that puts it on their car. And I don't know if that's, illegal under this or not. And I don't know whether a resident permit, if only a resident can use it, is it attached to a particular vehicle, or is it attached to a particular person? You've got to be in the car with it attached to your forehead, or how that works. But I think that, some clarification there might be appropriate. I know my sister went through this with a dump permit in a certain community. She owned property there and she wanted a dump permit. She said she had to put it on her car. And she said, my car's in New Mexico. I rent a car when I come here. And they had a great deal of difficulty with the thought of how do you give someone a permit not for a particular vehicle. So, and that's another thing. And the last thing is interesting. Once again, it's confusing. I understand what you want, but it isn't what you say. And that is, under the regulations for parking in a zone, you cannot park in a zone more hours in a day than what the thing is. So that means if it's a 4-hour zone, you legally could not park there, say, from 8 p.m. to midnight, even though the meters aren't in effect then, because that's over 4 hours within a same day. So I don't know how that wants to be clarified also. So getting beyond what I consider technical corrections, we now get into, I would say, issues. Mr. Walsh told me I had to come complain to you instead of complaining at the hearing about neighborhoods, so I will. Right now we have a situation, I guess, where in 2 more years he says he's going to help out with the problems on nights and weekends in neighborhoods, but only in what he calls enforcement hours. But his definition of enforcement hours is only when there are meters. It doesn't seem to include the fact that there are 14 streets in the city that ban Sunday parking. There are 3 additional streets that ban parking up until midnight as compared to when the meters shut off. So there's a number of streets that have already time limits outside when the meters will be. And there's, I think, 200 streets in the city where you're not allowed to park in front of fire hydrants or in front of driveways and stuff like that. That I would say, so you have enforcement hours on all of those streets during the whole year. And it's proposed that the police department be discouraged from ever helping out in the off hours because any revenue from tickets that they write goes to the parking fund and not to them. So I'd like to change that tickets written by the police department, the money goes into the police overtime account. And only the stuff written by the parking committee, the parking enforcement officers, go in the parking account. And I understand that there's times a day when the police department is very busy and doesn't have time to write parking tickets. On the other hand, as we all know, there are peaks and valleys, and if they have time to write them, they should be encouraged to do so by being given the money to add some overtime when maybe they're too busy. And the other thing is, for some reason, the city thinks that parking enforcement officers should only work the same hours as bank tellers. They should only work downtown. They should only work like 8 to 4 or whatever. And except that once again, in this proposal, they're actually going to have some people or will be part-time and work on weekends, but only when the meters are installed. And I say, why not do it right now? Why, if we were allowed to have part-time parking enforcement officials, why don't we add one immediately, say 12 hours a week? They don't work a particular 12 hours, but they work different days, different hours during those days. I think there'd be no trouble paying the salary of these people with various parking offenses they could discover once they were given the ability to alter their time and so people don't know where to hide from them. I myself would be happy to do it for a 50% commission. I mean, there's plenty of people out there that could be given tickets if they needed them, but I'm sure you have a better approach to this. At any rate, so I think, and you can do that this year. You don't have to wait 2 years because these people will be more than paying for themselves. And the other thing, I really don't think that it's a good idea to put parking meters around the 2 elderly housing projects. I don't think that, those people don't have a lot of money. Their friends that come and visit them may not have a lot of money. Their caregivers certainly are not well paid. So to say that those people are the ones who should be making up the deficit in the parking fund, I think is a mistake. And I know there's some discussion, we won't charge in the evenings, but once again, I think you don't understand. A lot of elderly people don't drive at night. Their friends may not drive at night. They have visitors during the day. They have caregivers during the day. So having those people have to pay to park near the elderly housing projects is a mistake. And the same thing, if you say, those are really courthouses, I think most people don't go to the courthouse voluntarily. They wind up there because of reasons they'd rather not have. They don't really have any idea how long it might take to be there. Unlike if you're going shopping or going to the restaurant, you might have some idea how long it'll take you. If it runs over, you can either break off or go feed the meter or whatever. But if you're on the witness stand, I don't think the judge is going to be happy if you say, sorry, judge, I need to go put another quarter in the meter, or sorry, judge, I need to get my cell phone and add a quarter to the meter. So I think it's a mistake to put the additional meters around the courthouses and elderly housing projects, even if it's only during the day, because that obviously is when the court is there. That's when most of the visitors to the elderly housing are there. I think that the problem is that your consultant said you've got to pay $175 at the meters downtown to bail out the parking fund. And they had a bunch of hearings downtown. The people downtown didn't like it. They said, bill it to somebody else. So they're trying to find ways to bill it to somebody else. But I know, the tax rate only went up 3%, but then you had your valuation go up 5%, it starts getting bigger. I talked to a guy from a trailer park, his taxes went up 17% this year. I mean, you cannot keep billing things to property taxes. And if you count the fact that property taxes are paying for garage repairs, property taxes are paying for maintenance of sidewalks and hauling snow downtown, the parking fund really is getting a huge bailout from property taxes when that's inappropriate. We know that 2/3 of the parking tickets are given to people who are not Concord residents. We don't know what percent of parking fees are paid by people who aren't Concord residents, but let's say it may be similar. If we were to charge the parking fees downtown that are actually required to pay for the downtown services, most of them be paid by people from out of town. People in surrounding communities tend to have more money than Concord residents. So I don't understand why, just because the downtown people think it's a good idea to shift the parking expenses on the property taxes, that the city council as a whole does. I think you start holding meetings in trailer parks instead of downtown, you'd get a different take on this. And
They're manufactured housing parks, okay?
what?
They're manufactured housing parks.
Okay, I'm not going to argue semantics. The guy told me where he lived, and I'm using his words. And once again, I think that it's a mistake. Right now, we start the meters at 8. You said we're going to change to 9. That would be an easy way, without raising the prices any more, was to keep it at 8. The same thing, we could keep the side streets what they are now instead of cutting them back. That's a way to charge the people who are actually using these things instead of billing them to people in other parts of the city that aren't using them. I think the garage rates are going up 12 to 16% from 2005. The property tax rate has gone up 43% since 2005. So I don't see why, the garage rates can't go up a little bit more and the property taxes go up a little bit less. And on Thanksgiving Day, I went to Market Square in Portsmouth and walked around downtown. It's a beautiful place. Of course, I went on Thanksgiving Day because that's one of only about 10 days in the year that they don't enforce the meters till 8 p.m. They enforce the meters till 8 p.m. on Sunday even. And I don't see why, once again, if Portsmouth can have meters till 8, Manchester can have meters to 8, the peak time for some of the core area was found to be 6 to 8 on Saturdays. why we don't go till 8 o'clock and once again let the people who are actually using the spaces pay for them and not the rest of the city. So, I don't know. Oh, one last thing is I'm not quite sure why the city manager gets to set the rates for resident parking permits when the city council sets all the other rates. You know, take an extra 5 minutes, pick a number, and set it in the ordinance instead of giving that authority to the city manager. Okay, I guess that's enough to say on this issue for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Swiker? Seeing none, thank you very much. Good to see you. Anyone else wishing to testify?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Welcome.
members of the council, Madam Clerk, and Mr. Manager. Charlie Russell of Concord, New Hampshire. I have some written comments I'll pass around for the record if anybody wants as extra copies, but I'm concerned about the lack of public members on the parking committee. Public participation has always been the watchword. I went down the list of committees on the city website, and a lot of them are citizen members, but there's also some that have more than one council member. But in I guess about 15 years ago, there was an ordinance that created the 10-person parking committee. Four council members right now, been 6 vacancies for who knows how long. There's supposed to be annual reports. I haven't asked to see them, but I'm not sure they exist or not. But there's no public members on the committee. And if the city government is a partnership between the people, some council 15 years ago decided it was important to put downtown leaders and the public on this issue. Having the right to speak at a hearing or a public forum, I attended one in November at Red River Theater. I raised some questions, and having the right to speak, and also, but being on the committee and being able to vet questions, raise questions, vet proposals, and raise issues is different. And, you know, I served on the parking committee 10 or 12 years ago, 8, 10, 12 years ago. That was when we put in kiosks. The mayor put me on it because I was saying, let's sell the parking garages off. Well, I'm not here to tout that here, but when I last served on it, there was $250,000 in unpaid parking tickets. I asked somebody, and they said, we're going to work on it. And when I went to this presentation, I found out we now have $670,000 of unpaid parking tickets. And so if you can't manage to collect what you have now, then how are you going to collect the new rates? Today's union leader, which I read first, and then I switch to the Monitor and the Globe, Jack Falvey has a headline. The article it doesn't pertain to this, but it says, to fix a leaky bucket, plug the hole or pour in more water. So with $670,000 in unpaid parking tickets, and I think Mr. Walsh said 14% every year won't be collected. So with $2 million coming in, we now have, I guess, $250,000 every year that's not being collected. Seems to me, before we start throwing more money at the city, we ought to come up with a solution to collecting these parking fees. Other things that presumably committee members would raise is south end of Store Street, 40, 50, 60 cars in the street, 10 hours a day. Why no meters? And then we wonder why within 250 yards we have the Capitol Commons parking garage where it's underutilized. Maybe we ought to put some meters on that end of the street, and we can raise some revenues. Capitol Center for the Arts, people pay lots of good money to go there. You pay good money to go see the Red Sox. If anybody's ever found a free parking spot near Fenway Park, maybe you ought to tell me so I can use it. But the same thing there. You're paying. You have out-of-towners coming in. You have, as Mr. Swiker said, peak times that are other. So the parking meter fund was solvent until Capitol Commons garage came on about 10 years ago. And if the garage created the revenue shortfall, why are the rates on Main Street being raised to pay for a problem that was created by the garage? And maybe maybe some TIF funds, which I guess which we have some surplus, should be used to pay for the garage. city hires expensive out-of-town consulting firms and yet refuses to put, or for some reason hasn't put these 6 public members there. I don't have the answers. Hopefully, the committee members, if appointed, will have some answers. If this isn't going into effect until July, time still remains. I served before. I'm not volunteering to serve. I'm sure there's other people that would serve. But I urge the council to reject the report or table it, appoint 6 members, have some public hearings. When I looked at the minutes of the meetings of the parking committee, looks to me like the last 2 public hearings on this were August last year and September, and there was a forum. Jealously guarded any money being taken out of that. And I know it started with, well, it's a down year in revenue. We're really, we're plowing some spaces downtown. But it seems to me if it was self-supporting before, that perhaps we should continue that. And if the purpose of TIF and deferring taxes going into the general fund is to build up some revenues there, then maybe we ought to look toward paying for that public improvement from TIF funds. But I haven't seen the annual reports for TIF. I haven't seen them for the parking fund, which is part of the ordinance. And, you know, perhaps a committee that with public members might have a little better objective analysis than being you know, hearing the city's mindset to, we need more money, even though we can't collect $675,000. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming out tonight. Anyone else wishing to testify? Any one of these 3 items? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on those 3 items. Madam Clerk, takes us to item D, please.
It's a resolution determining the proposed project as a public benefit and approving an application by South Pleasant Street LLC for a 6-year RSA 79E Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive for the renovation of real estate located at 5 through 7 South State Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
And members of the council, the property in question consists of a 4-story, 28,196 square foot gross mixed-use building on a 1/4 acre, which is currently features retail and office use on the 1st and 2nd floors, with residential use on the 3rd and 4th floors for a total of 10 apartments. The building was constructed in 1911 and was originally known as the Kearsarge, per historic inventory prepared for the city in 1999. The property is currently assessed at $1,012,000. The owner plans to invest $2.924 million, or $103.70 per square foot, to purchase and renovate the building, as well as convert the 1st and 2nd floor commercial spaces into 18 new market-rate apartments. Apartments will consist of studios, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units. City Council has the discretion to grant tax relief of up to 5 years as part of the initial part of the review of the 79E7 section of the RSAs. Analysis for this is provided in the report that you have. The statute also provides additional year of tax relief for qualifying projects on a discretionary basis. You can do up to additional 2 years of tax relief for a project that results in new residential units. As mentioned, this has 18 units of new housing and therefore is eligible for the benefit. In order to approve this application, the City Council must determine the development will create one or more public benefits. You have those outlined in your report of what those are. The applicant has provided a pro forma for this project. The pro forma is proprietary, not subject to public disclosure. A review of the pro forma has confirmed that although the developer's project does achieve positive cash flow, it is marginal in the short term without the RSA 79E benefit, as it will not achieve the certain debt service coverage ratios required by its lender. Potential tax savings to the applicant, in this case, the property's current assessed value of $1,012,000. This will serve as the project's base value for the purpose of 79E. The city's assessing department projects that the property will have an assessed value of $2,475,700 upon completion of the proposed improvements. Based on this information, staff projects that the RSA 79E benefit will result in a total savings to the developer of $283,000. Please see the attached spreadsheet which you have in your reports, which is available to the public. which outlines projected financial benefits of 79E awarded to applicant. For more information, staff has determined that the applicant complies with all the requirements set forth in RSA 79E and therefore recommends the City Council approve the attached resolution granting 6 years for property tax relief, subject, obviously this is a new value, with conditions set forth in the attached resolution. Glad to answer any questions.
Who has questions, Mrs. Manager? Seeing no questions, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify on this item? Mrs. Swiker. Actually, you know what, gentlemen, would you like to go first? Go ahead. Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome.
Water?
If you need water, you can have as much water as you wish.
Like some? I'm good, thank you.
If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves.
Sure. I'm Kier Harris of Elm Grove Companies.
I am Newton Kershaw, principal at Elm Grove Companies. So put together a few comments. First, I wanted to congratulate the mayor and city council persons for an excellent job and foresight for the Main Street redevelopment project. I am a resident of Manchester, New Hampshire. I was born in Concord at the hospital, so I spent my first day there.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Our company is based in Manchester. We own and operate over 1,000 apartments in New Hampshire and some in Massachusetts. And we've done projects in over 60 different communities in the state, but we hadn't found the opportunity to do a project here until about 3 years ago when we bought about 14 apartments. And at that time, we also looked at this building and 3 others that we had bought at the same time in September to do this project, and we decided not to. And the difference between 3 years ago and today was the implementation of the Main Street project. It showed a directionality of the market here and kind of an upswing, and that is the type of thing that as developers we're looking for. So we stretched to make something like this happen. Also, I'd like to take a moment to show appreciation for the amendment that was made to our site plan review. There was a costly and time-consuming process on the books that wasn't right for our project, and we were allowed a variance in October to not have to complete that process. So that's very helpful to our development. Also want to thank the city staff for their efforts. There was an initial meeting at the beginning of the summer, and they've been engaged and responsive and have had a positive attitude throughout and have been willing to make common sense decisions to move our efforts forward in this development. So I'd like to ask a couple of questions of myself in front of you and then articulate the answers, because I think they're pertinent for an RSA 79E type of conversation. And before answering and asking, we have done this successfully in Manchester, New Hampshire. We've done this successfully in Rochester, New Hampshire, where they've had this on the books and we have gotten the tax relief. So the 2 questions that I always want to ask is the proposed development right for the municipality, in this case Concord? And does the project make financial sense for Concord? So with regards to the first question of whether this development is right for Concord, I'd like to talk not only about this property in question, but all 4 buildings. So on Pleasant Street and South State Street, 1 block off of Main Street in Concord, we acquired 4 buildings at the end of September. The total square footage is just over 40,000 square feet, and we will be making 41 apartments and about 18,000 square feet of commercial space. There will be 3 restaurants, one which was a coffee shop that was pre-existing, 2 new restaurants across the street, one which is an Asian noodle shop, another which is a pizza shop. And there are 2 retail spaces that will persist. Also, we've consolidated the office space that had been in some of the buildings into one central location across the street above from the noodle shop and pizza shop. Okay, so the project, the 2 properties that will be in question that we're discussing here are One which is what I consider one of the architectural gems of Concord. I think it's magnificent, on South State Street. And that property, we will have 28 apartments. Those 28 apartments will be done in a very high level of finishes that will be attractive to people of financial means who will want to live proximate to the downtown area. There's sufficient parking on site, so people will pay the money to come and live there, walk to work in many instances, or commute to wherever they're going. But the important thing to note is that those people who will be residing there will have disposable income that they will likely spend in proximity to where they are living. So I did a quick back of the napkin analysis of how many apartment units there had been before we acquired this development and how many there will be, and determined what extra disposable income those residents before would have had to spend wherever they'd spend it, but one can assume they'd spend some in walking distance from their home, and what that disposable income would be with the 41 apartments afterwards. And the difference is about $75,000 worth of disposable income before versus about $600,000 worth of disposable income afterwards. So those are people that can come home at night and not want to cook for themselves and walk to a restaurant. Those are people that can walk to the co-op and cook food for themselves, people that can walk to the Capitol Center for the Arts, people that can walk back and forth to work. Having people living downtown will have that economic impact, but it will also have the impact of having people that can be the employees at the downtown businesses who are looking for well-paid employees to come and locate in Concord to live and walk and back and forth to work. So back to the question, is this the type of growth in development in Concord that is positive? For those reasons, I say yes. Does it make financial sense? I articulated the disposable income question. I think the other thing to discuss, obviously, is tax base. Question is, tax base when? Tax base now, tax base in the future. If this project doesn't happen, if a developer like us or the next developer that looks back and sees how the outcome of this goes and whether they want to move here, if this happens or doesn't happen, there's a tax base of $1,011,000 for that building, and it persists as such into the future. If something like this is to happen because of incentives like the RSA 79E, then in 6 years, you have a tax base that's $2.5 million as opposed to $1 million. And then that repeats into the future. So this incents people to come and want to do this project. That was very specifically the case here, and I'll articulate why. And I'll have to give it a little bit of a session on banking to tell you why, because one statement was made which was accurate, which is that once we get done the construction phase, there is positive cash flow. But unless we were taking money out of our pocket to do this development, that's insufficient. We need to get debt financing to do projects like this, and a bank is going to require not only that the project has enough to pay the debt equally to $1 of debt needing to be paid is how much we made, but they want to have 1.2 times that. So if we make $100,000, they want to see that if it's $100,000 in interest payments and mortgage payments, they're going to want to see that we made $120,000. The project that we're talking about now and the other one, neither of them make it to that threshold. One starts out anywhere between slightly negative to about 1.19. The other starts at about 0.1, and I'm getting real technical, to about 1.18. So they don't get there from here. However, with the RSA 79E tax treatment, that is not an issue. The bank is happy to fund the project, and we can get past that time, and after that, it works just fine into the future. So I guess I'll try to be a little succinct because I was given some advice that it might be good to do so. I'll just say that a virtuous cycle has been started by you in Concord. You had foresight and you did a great redevelopment of the downtown. We've seen it, we want to be part of it. There's other downtown buildings that have upper levels that do not have residences currently. We'd love to continue to do these types of things. These projects are not the most lucrative projects that we do. We have mission-driven, we are mission-driven, and so roughly half of our projects, we really want to do downtown redevelopment as opposed to just commodity apartments. We'd love to come back and do more. This is the type of thing that incents us to do that. So thank you for your consideration. Keir might want to fill in the gaps if I miss anything, but certainly we'll take any and all questions that you would have.
Thank you.
Sure, yeah, if I could just add one thing, I think it's important to note the public benefits that we're looking at here, and I'm proud to say that of the 5 different public benefits that somebody can shoot for to receive an RSA 79E, we're able to actually check the boxes on 4 of the 5. We're required to do 1, and so I'm happy to announce that we have been able to do that, that as Newton described, we're enhancing the economic vitality of the downtown area. We're enhancing and improving a historically and culturally important building, or actually 2 of them, the Star Building and the Kearsarge Building that we've been talking about. We are working to promote a municipal center and actually have people live and work downtown. And the 4th is to actually create residential housing downtown. So I think it's important to note that we have been able to achieve those things. And we hope that the City of Concord will continue to invest with us and our community-minded investors who do want to revitalize the towns that we all know and love.
Great. Thank you very much. Any questions for these gentlemen? Councilor Schley.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thank you very much for your presentation. It sounds like a fantastic project. It's certainly something that I think will have a positive impact in our community. However, I am concerned about the granting of a tax abatement for you. That puts an additional burden, and what we're doing is we're subsidizing you at the expense of taxpayers in our community. And we're looking at, or you're looking at, a project that's almost a $5 million project. And you're asking for a tax abatement of approximately $65,000 a year. I understand that you need that ratio in order to get the bank note, but I also understand, correct me if I'm wrong, that you also have private investors, that you get money through private equity. And you also spoke here that you would have to take money out of your own pocket in order to make the project work until such time as there was a positive cash flow. So I guess my question is why should the community subsidize you if you have enough confidence in this project that it'll be profitable and make money in the future? Why should we carry you for those 6 years? Why shouldn't you be willing to invest in your project?
Well, it's a good question. I wouldn't use the word subsidy.
I would, though.
Fair enough. I wouldn't.
Why don't you let him answer the question?
So I've spent a lot of time with RSA 79E. RSA 79E was not yet adopted in Rochester before we wanted to proactively work with the City of Rochester and teach them about it in order that we could then do a project with its help that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. And as a result, we were able to renovate a 22,000 square foot building in the downtown of Rochester and increase the tax base from which taxes would be derived in the future. So I don't view this as a subsidy because we have what we have right now. The building is what it is, and it's assessed at $1 million. And if we don't do a project, then that is what the taxation will be based on. If we don't do the project, it will not be $2.5 million of a tax base from which to derive benefit. And yes, we do have private investors. And thankfully, we have community-minded private investors as well, who I was able to convince that Concord was going in the right direction. And even though the margins on this deal were not the same as our other commodity-based projects, that in the long run, the rising ocean would rise all ships, so to speak, and the value of the building in the future would be worth it because it would lead likely to other redevelopment in the area, which would make the property value for us rise in the future. So without this RSA 79E, which I don't consider a subsidy, we can't do projects like this. we do need partnership with cities like Concord to do these types of things. And as real estate developers, we take risks. One of the risks that we take in putting together this deal is to put together a financial pro forma that's inclusive of receipt of the RSA 79E tax treatment, because we believe that it's reasonable to accomplish projects like this, and there are long-term benefits to the city for doing these types of things.
Thank you very much. Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. My question is, first of all, the subsidy, I don't think is a question. I mean, so my question is, if 79E wasn't available to you, would you be in Concord at all? And could you speak to communities that you might have avoided because you didn't have this opportunity? And secondly, is it fair to say that you have a responsibility to your investors to take advantage of every opportunity you can to do this project in the most economical way possible?
Well, to the latter question, yes, of course, we have a responsibility to do it most economically. Without RSA 79E, we would not have put an offer on these properties. We would not have attempted to buy the properties because it wouldn't have made financial sense. Like I said, until 3 years ago, while we'd done business in 60 communities across the state, we hadn't once done a deal in Concord. Because when values went down in the state after the last, recession, Concord didn't go down as far, and we didn't find the opportunities here. We only found one about 3 years ago when we bought 14 apartments, and that was opportunistic. We couldn't repeat that business model. There weren't the opportunities. Now, with a larger project, to be clear, those were smaller buildings. In order to envision a larger project, we need to take advantage of something like this to make it happen. We made that happen in Rochester, like I said before. We made it happen in Manchester. We couldn't have done a project that we did do in Manchester, the flats in Hanover Commons, which was the first implementation of mini flats or micro units in the state of New Hampshire, which has been a swimming success. We will also have that type of apartment here in Concord at 2 of the buildings. So these are the types of things, these are the tools that the state gives, to the different municipalities to adopt to help economic development.
Thank you. Councilor Chamberlain.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I ask a question of the city manager?
Sure.
Mr. Spell, on this first property, the assessing department estimates that at the end of the abatement, the property tax abatement, in 7 years, that this property will be worth $2.475 million. What do you think is the likelihood, without redevelopment, of that property in 7 years being worth that?
Without redevelopment, I don't think there is a chance.
All right. And what do you think is the possibility with the redevelopment, with the RSA 79E tax opportunity?
I think if you ask these gentlemen, they'd probably tell you that value might be a little bit high. I think it might actually be a little bit low, because I believe it's something.
I think it's a little bit high.
There you go. I think
I'll go with the city manager.
I think what we'll do, I think they're exactly right in the fact that what we're trying to do is trigger the redevelopment in that area, and this is these are historically significant buildings which they're going to tackle. And I think just as the other properties that you've seen redevelop because of what you did with Main Street and going to continue to redevelop, those are going to actually spur other projects to happen, which will then rebound back on the values of the buildings that they're doing. So, but I'm sure he's being optimistic in terms of his side, and I'm being optimistic on top of my side. But I think we both end up in the same place. So.
Follow up, Your Honor?
Sure.
Was it not one of the goals of the downtown redevelopment to encourage upper story development?
To encourage both upper story redevelopment and market rate housing in downtown.
Excellent, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for these gentlemen? Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your very thorough presentation.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Who else would like to testify on this item? Welcome back.
Hello, I'm still Roy Schweiker, and I guess we have a very peculiar arrangement with these TIF districts, and that is that any economic development within the TIF district is actually going to have a negative impact on the tax rate in Concord, because the TIF district is to keep all the revenues, but at the same time, the rest of the taxpayers have to pay the expenses. And that's particularly true with the DES building, where I think that the number of school kids in that building, the cost of them is going to far exceed the money that the TIF district brings in. But the city thinks that's a great idea because they get to keep the money of the TIF district to buy goodies for downtown, and they don't care if the school board's got to raise the tax rate even more to cover all the kids. And I think we have a similar thing with this, that, I mean, they're talking about the economic spin-offs downtown, and I think it is true they will exist. But unfortunately, unlike cities in other states, Concord is not allowed to charge a city income tax. Concord is not allowed to charge a city business profits tax. Concord is not allowed to charge a city sales tax. So all of these spin-off benefits that are going to occur downtown, the city can't turn them into money. And let's assume that because of these great benefits, the property downtown becomes more valuable. Guess what? Once again, we've got all this money going into the TIF district, but it isn't going to help with, who's going to pay for the police, the fire, the schools that are, generated by this stuff? Well, somebody else, the rest of the city. I mean, I think we're looking at between the parking fund and these, developments where the money goes to the TIF district and the rest of the city's got to pay. We're probably looking for another, $1,000 on the tax rate. And that's before we have the all-day kindergarten. That's before we have the new runlet. And once again, if taxes went up 17% this year for this poor guy in this place where the houses came originally on wheels, how long can people afford to do that? So my feeling is that there's two questions I have for these gentlemen. I don't oppose their project, but I think we need to see that the people that need the revenue get it. So the first thing is, I think the city should make a commitment that they will exempt from the TIF district as much valuation of this project as is needed for the school district to pay for whatever kids are there. I think that's only fair. We shouldn't be penalizing the rest of the city because of this project, so the city needs to exempt enough money from that to pay for the stuff. And I don't know if you've heard that in Durham they just had an incident, or I won't say an incident, a situation whereby there were people living in tax-exempt housing owned by the university that were sending kids to the Oyster River School District. And the Oyster River District made the university pay the cost of those kids because they were living in tax-exempt housing. They weren't paying taxes on the property, so it was only fair that the school district be reimbursed for the cost of those people. And I think we're having a similar thing here. I think we need to have a situation where the city exempts, once this money comes in, to enough money for the school district to pay for the kids there. And I think until such time as that happens, during the time that they're exempt from the property taxes, we should ask the developers to pay the tuition less the adequacy for all the kids in their project. Because after all, that's an expense. We shouldn't be making the rest of the taxpayers in the city pay for their revenue. So I think that should be a condition of this process, is that they will pay the tuition for whatever kids until they go back to pay the regular taxes. And the second issue I have with this, and I thought this counselor was going to see it, but he came up with the opposite approach, and that is, not this building, I'm not going to speak on the next one, so I'm going to bring it up now, that both of the city assessor is coming up with a valuation for this building that's far less than what these people are putting into it. The next one, they're supposed to be putting $2 million into it, and the assessment's only going to be $1.1 million. And, I don't know. I was very impressed by these gentlemen. I don't think they're complete idiots. I don't see why they're going to put $2 million into a building that's only worth $1.1 million. So, once again, this guy that lives in this place with the little boxes, if one of those units sells at a price, the city assessor, ups the assessment of everybody else to equal that price. I think that another part of this agreement is that these gentlemen should agree that the taxable valuation of these projects is going to be what they put into it at the end of the 6 years. So it's not going to be 2.475, it's going to be 2.924, because if they don't think it's worth 2.924, why are they spending that much? And more importantly, on the other one, if they don't think it's worth 2.085, why are they spending that much, and why should they get away with paying taxes on only 1.111? So, I think this is not a bad project, but I think we need to protect the rest of the city from, undue expense from the project. So I think we need to cover the cost of the school kids. I think we need to charge them fairly for the value of their project. So I think that should go in the project agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? See none. Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to testify? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and we'll open up the next item. Item E, please.
Is a resolution determining the proposed project has a public benefit and approving an application by South Pleasant Street LLC for a 6-year RSA 79E Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive for the renovation of real estate located at 15 through 17 Pleasant Street.
Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the property consists of a two-story, 18,360 square foot, that's gross, commercial building on 0.15 acre lot, which is currently features a coffee shop and a retail use on the first floor and office suites on the second floor. The building, originally known as the Star Theater, was constructed in 1915 as a 1,200-seat theater at a cost of $50,000. The theater was closed and the building was converted into office and retail use in 1952. The property is currently assessed at $657,700. The owner plans to invest $2.085 million, or $113.56 per square foot in the property, of which $925,000 is directly for design and construction costs. The developer plans to convert the second floor of the property into 13 apartments, including micro flats. The ground floor of the building will remain largely unchanged. The project is scheduled to start in January 2018, so it's next month. It will take approximately 6 months to complete. Staff believes that the project as proposed satisfies 4 of the 5 criteria that is part of the RSA 79E7 review and is therefore eligible for the RSA 79E program. Again, the project only needs to satisfy, as was pointed out earlier, 1 of the 5 criteria for consideration. The applicant has provided a pro forma for this project. The review of the pro forma has confirmed that although the developer's project does achieve positive cash flow, it is marginal in the short term without the RSA 79E benefit, as it will not achieve the certain debt service coverage ratios required by the lender. Without RSA 79E, the project will have a debt service coverage ratio in the range of negative 0.18 and 1.19 in the first several years after the project is completed. Staff projects that granting of the RSA 79E will result in a total savings to the developer of approximately $87,763. Staff has determined the application complies with all the requirements and therefore recommends City Council approve the attached resolution granting 6 years of property tax relief on the property subject to the terms and conditions as set forth within the attached resolution, which you have in your reports. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for the manager? Seeing now, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this item? Your comments covered both projects, right?
Yeah, if you have any questions.
No, it's okay. Okay, seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, item 26, please. Or F, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, by amending Schedule 1 of Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties, amending the fee for Chapter 26, Building Code, Section 2616-4, Fire Prevention Schedule, Tents and Air-Supported Structures.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
And members of the council, the language of the ordinance currently states that more than 200 square feet in the area of canopies greater than 400 square feet in area require a permit and associated fee. The state building code and the state fire code have been through an amendment process, and the requirement for a tent permit in the state building and fire codes is now for tents that cover an area of 400 square feet or greater. The fire department recommends that Schedule 1 of Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties of the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Governmental Organization be updated to be consistent with the state building and fire codes. Be glad to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item G, please.
It's a resolution authorizing the city manager to continue implementation of the revolving loan fund program and appropriating the sum of $260,586.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manager.
Madam members of the council, periodically, the city council appropriates revenues from interest and principal payments made by loan recipients to recapitalize this program. At the end of fiscal year 2017, the available balance of the repaid principal interest, the revolving loan program, which was Fund 2701, was $260,586. City administration requests that these monies be appropriated and reddeposited into revolving loan fund program. This will allow the program to continue making loans and grants to support eligible projects. Of the amount appropriated, $5,000 will be used for administrative purpose to manage and administer the revolving loan fund program. With this appropriation, total amount available to loan will be $973,138. Be glad to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, item H, please.
The resolution authorizing and appropriating the sum of $975,000 as a transfer to reserves.
Mr. Manager.
Madam members of the council, the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2017, the city is reporting a preliminary general fund surplus of $369,300. Management plans to allocate $975,000 at year-end to assigned fund balance. Management also recommends that appropriating $975,000 from the fiscal year 2017 assigned fund balance and transfer to the trust fund reserves as detailed below, which I'll get to in a second, and appropriate $50,000 to be transferred to the trust fund reserve for the purposes detailed below. The items requested in the resolution are the highway reserve or the paving reserve, $270,000 to be allocated. Equipment reserve, $75,000. Office furniture and equipment, $30,000. Economic development reserve, $250,000. Recreation reserve, $350,000 for a total of $975,000. In addition to the general fund, the fiscal year 17 summary year-end performance for other funds actually all look very good. The project inspection fund actually is $50,000 under, and that was due to some billing issues, so that's been taken care of. The parking fund had projected a $167,800 loss. It was an actual $24,900 gain or fund balance left at the end of the year. The airport fund had projected $63,500. It actually came in at $2,000 below. The golf course fund was projected to have a $1,200 ending year fund balance. It came in at $23,900. That's the one that still needs some work. The arena fund came in $30,900 better than projected. The solid waste fund, $799,100 better than projected. The water fund, $734,200 better than projected. And the water fund, $616,200 better than projected. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Congratulations. Good.
Thank you for, never mind. Okay, seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item I, please.
It's a resolution appropriating the sum of $50,000 from reserves as a supplemental appropriation to the city's general fund for furniture, equipment, purchase and replacement, and education and training.
Mr. Manager.
Honor members of the council, you recall several years ago, what the city council decided to do was remove many of the furniture and equipment purchases or budget amounts in the actual departmental budgets, along with staff development dollars. And actually, we allocate those into funds now. So this is to actually take $50,000 of those funds, $30,000 for furniture and equipment, which should be spread.
Seeing none, we'll Okay, please.
accepting and appropriating the sum of $11,133.46 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency, funds to be designated for conducting distracted driver enforcement patrols.
Mr. Manager.
Nothing to add, Your Honor.
Not even talk about your distracted driving? No, all right. Just checking, making sure. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Any wishing to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, item L, please.
A resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $24,053.78 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency, funds designated for DWI impaired driver patrols.
Mr. Manager.
Your Honor, I should mention on this, I'll just mention this report, there are no matching funds involved.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item M, please.
It's a resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $27,270.92 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency, funds to be designated for sustained traffic safety enforcement patrols.
Thank you very much, Ms. Manager.
Your Honor, members of the council, this will be used for the goal of reducing motor vehicle collisions and improving roadway safety.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. Anyone wish to testify? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Madam Clerk, item N, please.
It's a resolution authorizing and appropriating the sum of $93,490 for fiscal year 2018 operating expenses for the citywide community center.
Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, could I request a 1-minute recess so we could set up for our presentation?
1 minute recess.
Thank you. Council, the construction of the new community center at the former Dame School started in 2017.
If you want to stop and let that go, we can do that.
No, misstep. Breaks over. With an estimated construction schedule of 11 to 12 months, we're happy to announce we're 5 months into construction and we're on schedule, on budget. During the fiscal year 18 budget process, we estimated that the total costs for park and recreation and for library costs associated with the community center, which would include not only the operating costs for this rest of this fiscal year and any specific capital items that we needed to acquire, was going to be $98,862. After we've gone through and refined all that down, actually we're coming in lower than that. The estimated cost is $93,490. That'll cover all new expenses associated with the opening of the community center later this fiscal year, and I'll break those down for you.
I'll tell you what, is there anything new? We've all had the report, and we've all read the report. Is there anything new information you'd like to provide us that has not been provided in the report?
No, there was some nice, pretty pictures that the alternate group came up that I can't access to my shared drive. So
I can email those to you tomorrow. I'll put them onto the website.
I guess if you want to add something, I guess what I'd ask you to do is simply focus on what we have not already read.
I would say then we're ready to go.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Just a
or
quick
Councilor?
one. I don't know if I missed it. Do you have an idea of what the revenues are going to be in relation to these expenses?
Yes, it's towards the end of the report. It has a revenue line for program and event fees and camps. I believe is a total of about $160,000.
$2,308.
So the revenues will exceed the expenses?
No. No, that's for, what we wanted to do as part of the report is show you what it would take for remember, this is going to open on June 1st, so it's only 1 month of the fiscal year. So what we showed you was the numbers for fiscal year 19. So you'd actually see a full year's worth of revenues and expenses. So the full year of revenues is $162,308, as is the estimate for the revenues for rentals and program and classes. The expenses would be $329,051, and for a net expense of $166,743 for the recreation side. For the library side, of course, there's usually not a whole lot of revenues. Sorry, Todd. It's just expenses. That's $46,003. We have anticipated savings from expenses reduced from the Heights Gym not being used. So the total net costs are $204,967. Fiscal year 19,
Okay,
which you'll
so-
look at when you do the budget in May and June.
Councilor Slay.
So, thank you. So so on the recreation side, about 50% of the expenses will be generated by revenues.
That's about right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Your Honor?
Councilor Collins.
Just quickly, I just want to ask the city manager about the project itself and the construction, because we're using a construction management process versus a traditional bid
Sorry,
process.
right.
And so we're into it pretty well now. And what's your opinion? Was this the right way to go on this project with the construction management? Did you find any savings or expediting the project at all with this project?
Without question, and I think the only reason I can really do this is because I have Mr. Walsh and Mr. Gill on this on a regular basis. But the next project that we do, we should make sure we use this process, because this will not only move things along faster, but also save us money and make sure we don't get into the usual or the past. The designer, the engineer saying one thing, the construction company saying another, pointing fingers at each other, and then driving up costs. Even though that's just inherent in that process. This process we have, if you can find the right construction manager who knows their job and actually, is willing to work with the community, then that's the best way to go. And we've actually found that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions? Councilor Slay.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a quick follow-up. Do you know offhand what the difference in revenues and expenses are from what we were currently paying, or what it's currently costing compared to what it will be, the estimates?
So what the current, to run
I guess I
the
could go
community
look in the,
center?
I guess I could go look in the budget and,
I don't know them off, David, would you know?
not on top of my head.
Not now.
We can
Sorry.
definitely find it out.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions?
If I made the next 4 slides real quick.
Sure.
Renderings, new community center, the lobby, auditorium, and the gymnasium. I just wanted to, this will start being advertised tomorrow. I just want to get everybody a nice visual, and I am done.
And then we'll put those online tomorrow for the public. Glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Great to see you all.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll open up the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to testify on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Madam Clerk, that takes us, I believe, to item O.
It's a resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $20,596 from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation to support projects that enhance the special character and vitality of Concord.
Thank you very much. Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, the idea for this year's installment would be to make improvements to the whole City Hall campus, which include Green Street Community Center, City Hall campus, City Hall Annex, in this area, making, particularly as it geared toward the entranceways and the public access points.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Seeing none, we'll open the hearing. Anyone wish to testify on this item? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and takes us to our action phase. Madam Clerk, item 21, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title II, Traffic Code, Chapter 18, Parking, parking meters.
Okay. Do we have any discussion? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a question. Mr. Schweiker asked a question that I'm also interested in. The meter feeding ordinance, does that not apply to the app, or does it still apply?
Mr. Walsh, you want to come just join us for this discussion? What section of the, are you looking under?
Well, we have a section of the ordinance that doesn't allow meter feeding, so if you're at a 3-hour zone, you can't go back at the end of 3 hours to feed. Mr. Schweiker had said that that's still the case for cash, but if you were feeding it electronically with a credit card or other means, I'm guessing the app might be another mean, that somehow you can thwart that portion of the ordinance, so I'm just asking if that's true.
So I don't believe it's true. We will take a look at the ordinance to see if it's a problem. We are not going to a pay-by-cell app immediately. We would like to get one on board early in fiscal 19. We have to go through a selection process. That's going to take some time. Those, just in general, the way those apps work is you set up various zones throughout the city. So if the city goes forward and has a 3-hour meter zone that's on the street as well as a 10-hour meter zone on the street, the 3-hour zone might be Zone A, and when you go to pay for that on your app, it would know that you're in Zone A versus being in a Zone B. And so the app would know if you've loaded a certain amount of parking and prevent you from going further, where if you were in the unlimited on-street meter zone, you'd be able to do that. You'd be able to add more time if you so wanted to do that, and the app prompted you to do that.
Thank you.
Councilor Slade.
Thank you, Your Honor. While we have you, Mr. Walsh. If I remember correctly, at the public hearing at the Red River Theater, there was a discussion about not using nickels and dimes in the kiosks and the machines, the smart meters.
That's correct. So we have 85 kiosks that are deployed in downtown right now. Some of the dimes in particular can be problematic for the kiosk machines because they can cause jams. There is a recommendation in the staff report, in the parking committee's report that talks about potentially going to quarters only. It's a recommendation. If the council wanted to pursue that, we could. If we were going to do that, we'd do it initially for the kiosk machines only because obviously we have 375 mechanical meters throughout the city that rely on coin, and those would be converted in fiscal 2021. We don't have plans to do that immediately, but it was something that we wanted to raise everybody's attention towards.
Let's not confuse people, because that is not on the agenda for this evening. That is not in here. In fact, Section 1838, use of parking meters clearly makes it such that if you'd like to use a nickel, dime, quarter, and a kiosk, you can, correct?
That is correct. We are not changing that tonight.
All right. I just don't make sure anybody's confused. You can use, we're on page 311, Section A. Councilor Schley.
So this will, everything here, if I understand, won't take effect until July of this coming year, correct?
That is correct, yeah.
Thank you.
Further questions? Councilor Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pittman Street, the apartment building there are quite a few residents there that I believe are disabled and receive home care. Does that apartment building have a parking lot?
They do have a small parking lot. I can't tell you how large that is off the top of my head. I would speculate that it's probably somewhere in the 20 to 30 space range, that it's at the very end of Pittman Street. I also can't tell you how many residents in that building have vehicles or not.
Currently, with someone visiting that apartment building, would they be parking on Montgomery Street, or do you think State Street, Main Street?
They would be parking any one of those locations, I'd imagine. Yeah.
Once again, just to clarify, so Councilor Hirschak, if I understood your question correctly, you were asking when this ordinance would take effect, and the answer you gave was July 1st, 2018. That is true for most of it, except for those in which you were going to add meters on Concord Street, Dixon Ave, and portions of South Main Street from 76 South Main Street to Turner Ave. Those would go into effect not necessarily on July 1st, but when the meters are installed. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor. We're not asking for any dollars to purchase those meters tonight either.
Right.
Yep.
Any further questions? Somebody like to make a motion? Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Now we have a motion. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Schley.
I'll let the Mayor Pro Tem.
I recognize you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. So in the Sears Block TIF amended agreement and plan, it talks about, it says on page 6, item 5, that this shall be financed through the city parking funds. The Store Street garage. So the question is, where does or should those funds come from? My opinion is that those funds should come from people who use the system, who park and pay through the meters, or who wind up receiving fines because they violated one of our city codes. And so what I find particularly difficult is that the parking garages are only charging 50 cents when we're still subsidizing, when we're still going to wind up subsidizing the parking fund and the parking garages through the TIF district. And while some of that money for the parking, while we freed up some money for the parking fund by shifting some costs to the general fund, I'm concerned that by not charging a reasonable amount in the parking garages, that we're continuing to add costs to the community, the greater community, the community at whole, rather than moving closer to a system that pays for itself, that's self-sustaining. I would like to make an amendment to raise the parking garage fee to 75 cents and to be paid on Saturdays also. So that would be my motion.
So, looking at the resolution, could you tell me where you're amending?
So, that would be a good question.
And just so I'm clear, Councilor Schleck, were you suggesting that in this resolution we were somehow shifting items from the parking fund to the general fund?
Am I suggesting that?
Yeah, I was trying to understand what you said. That's why.
No, I'm not suggesting it. I'm stating it. There are costs that.
So when you're done showing me the fee,
no, it's
can
not
you show
here.
me in the resolution where we're doing that?
Excuse me?
I want to be crystal clear to everybody who's listening, who's watching, who's looking at the agenda. of what this resolution does and what it does not do. Do you follow?
Yes.
So in terms of the shift, which the report talks about, you're absolutely correct, of looking at items in the parking fund to the general fund, those items will be taken up during the budget process in May and June. And there'd be sufficient public hearings on those items, sufficient discussion on those items, and then we'll be given an opportunity to vote yes or no or make no change whatsoever. But they're not in this resolution. Is that the way you understand it?
Yes, that's the way I understand it. So my concern is that as we shift that money, what we're not doing is we're not making the parking fund is still not moving towards self-sufficiency. I still see a gap between expenses and revenue, and I don't believe, this is my opinion, that by charging 75 cents in the parking garages, that is going to discourage people from parking there. Particularly in the Store Street garage, if we go back to a system that most people have asked for through a number of the parking meetings when the consultants were here, that you pay as you leave the garage as opposed to pay when you enter.
So I was trying to flip through as you were talking. So are you looking at page 4 of 11, section B, parking garages and parking lots? Mr. Manager apparently has the answer.
Well, I was going to try to, I think if you go to report
yes
22.
No, I'm on the resolution.
Public hearing.
Because we're actually voting on the resolution. We're not voting on the report.
Well, it's the resolution that's under that report. So under the...
So I'm looking at the resolution.
Well, you have it in writing. So I was just going to say, if you go to that section for Council Hirschlag 22, and then on page 1 of that, on that resolution, it lists parking garages and parking lots per hour, 50 cents.
Right.
So what you're talking about is changing that 50 cents to 75 cents. And I think you'd also want to say whether or not it's just garages or garages and parking lots. Is that where you're going? I think that's where you're trying to go, right? You're trying to go from 50 cents to 75 cents, right?
Yes.
So if the mayor was
So I
asked,
should be looking under 18-3-8, use of parking meters.
That's exactly right.
B,
Right.
parking garages and parking lots. That's what I said before.
Per hour, yes.
I just wanted to clarify, because we've got the clerk trying to follow along.
Okay, thank you.
And the resolution ultimately is what we're voting on. So I just want to make sure the resolution is clear what you're
Right.
trying to do.
And I would like to change that to Monday through Saturday as opposed to Monday through Friday.
That's a different section.
Okay,
So we'll take them one at a time, okay?
thank you.
So the first one will be raising the rate in the parking garages from 50 cents to 75 cents per hour. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Okay. Seeing no second, then we'll stop there. I'm assuming we're not going to, now we could like to go to the Saturday
To
issue.
move this along, assuming there'll be no second, I'll yield the floor.
Don't assume anything. So where was the Saturday?
I'm yielding back to you, the floor to you, Your Honor.
That means I got to go find it here.
Your Honor, if it's helpful,
Yes, please.
I believe you want to amend 1833, discusses days of the week for meters for parking lots and garages, and right now they all reference Monday
Thank you
through
very
Friday.
much.
So that'd be the section to change if.
So section
Saturday.
18.3-3, periods of meters parking time established.
Section B.
Section B. I always thank you, Mr. Manager. So we're looking at both all three, the Store Street garage, School Street garage, State Street garage. Is that your intention? Mr. Hirschlag?
I'm not making a further amendment.
Okay, then I'm going to stop looking this up.
But that's where it would be.
Okay, all right. Anybody else have any further concerns? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a concern with the, first of all, before I say my concern, let me just say this is an excellent report. The committee did a great job. It took months of work. They did get a lot of public input. I know I went to at least one meeting, and this really took a great effort on everybody's part. So by and large, it's a great plan. My only concern is the plan for the out year, which is 2020, where we start talking about metering or placing restrictions on neighborhoods that are further out. Councilor Bouchard mentioned Pittman Street. That was one of my areas of concern around the elderly apartment building. And other areas such as South Street and Pleasant Street going way up to Merrimack Street, which is really quite a distance away from Main Street. And given that that is scheduled for 2020, my hope was that, and I'm about to make an amendment, to carve those out and during the budget process and maybe give this the rest of the section time to see how the revenues are coming in and see if we really need to go into the neighborhoods that deep. I think there are some other ways we can collect some revenue. Store Street, the extension where we had allowed free parking in the past, still remains free under this plan. So I don't feel comfortable voting for a plan that's going to put restrictions on our neighborhoods and still allow free parking on Store Street, which truly is part of the downtown district. And also the unpaid fines are a concern for me as well. So with that, I'm going to make a motion to amend Schedule X in Section 2, so Schedule 10, Roman numeral 10. And I can't list all the streets because what you'll do is you'll find them in Appendix 4 in the report. So everything in yellow slated for 2020, which is in the report on page 27, that's in Appendix 4, I'd say every street listed in yellow, you'd have to cross-reference back to the ordinance in Schedule X and delete those street names off of that. So that would include South Street, that would include North State Street, Montgomery Street, Court Street, Wall Street. There's a few more in there.
Second that.
Motion been made and seconded. So if I understand the motion, and then Councilor, sorry for the demotion, then Mr. Walsh will then get a chance to just speak to it, if you will. So if I understand the motion, you are in essence taking Section 2 of the proposed resolution and putting that on, tabling that.
Yes, although that schedule does have some streets that are appropriate, I believe. For instance, the ones in blue for 2019, I'm fine with those.
Okay. So we'll just go through that. I know, that's a pretty map, but I'm looking at what it actually says in the resolution, since that's what we're voting on. We're not voting on the map, so. Mr. Walsh, if you'd like to go first.
So just to speak to the Mayor Pro Tem's concerns, there are no streets in Schedule X or 10 that are part of the fiscal 2020 proposal.
What is, question, Your Honor?
Sure.
What is South Street from Pleasant to 230 feet down South Street?
South Street west of Pleasant Street. So there's a small section on South Street that runs basically not on the side of the federal court, but runs the opposite side of the street, which would be the east side of the street. I don't know about the west side. I think there are a couple meters there, and I think some of those might have been lost when the federal government decided to place their large granite blocks around the federal building to fortify it on South Street.
So, follow-up, Your Honor?
Please.
So, Mr. Walsh, are you telling me that none of the streets for 2020 are listed in this ordinance that we're voting on?
That is correct.
But it's in the report.
It's in the report, but what you have here, Counselor, and just to remind everybody, so what you have in front of you are the basic orders to start implementing pieces of the report that talk about being implemented in fiscal 19. So you do have the pieces for the 50 or so meters that are going to be on Dixon Avenue and Concord Street and the southerly end of South Main Street. You have that. There are other ordinances that are going to be before you momentarily that talk about residential parking around the UNH Law School, that talk about fees, fines, and penalties. But anything that is not coming up as part of that July 1 of 2018 implementation, it's not there. For this very reason, because we thought there might be some discussion about some of the out years, and it might be premature to bring those forward, especially where we're not going to start enforcing those as a meter area until 2020, and that's assuming that an ordinance at that time is passed and that funding is appropriated to purchase meters that would need to go into those other 247 spaces that are further west and north and south of the downtown area, the central business district.
So what was your proposal to come back to the council? When were you going to do that for the rest of the ordinance? during the budget process?
So,
or what was your
so
thought?
correct. We wanted to get some of these things teed up now, so we knew for going forward for budget assumptions, we can do that. And then for certain things that require appropriations, like additional staff that's talked about in the report that would start in fiscal 19, which would be for nights and hours of evenings and Saturday enforcement, neighborhood enforcement, that's that additional staff, an appropriation to purchase the initial 50 smart meters that we would do in those streets that I mentioned. Those sorts of things would come forward during the budget process. But rather than just come forward with a report from the parking committee, we felt it was appropriate, the parking committee talked about this, felt it was appropriate to bring forward basically the minimal ordinances to start implementing things on July 1st of 18, but we're really only talking about those items that are scheduled for implementation in fiscal, I'm sorry, in July 1st of 18, which is fiscal 19. We're only talking about those items that are scheduled for implementation in 19.
One more follow-up. So, Mr. Walsh, the streets in blue, the expanded meter zones, those
Yes.
are included in this.
Those are included in that, yes. So if you
So if
look,
I go to page 12 of your report, which lists the expanded meter zones, everything under the black line, which is in FY 2020, is not in this ordinance.
that is correct.
Okay.
And so,
I'm going to withdraw my motion.
I withdraw the second, but still, when it does come before us again, we still have the same concerns, so.
I appreciate it. And this is why, really, Councilor Schleich, this is why I was harping on understanding exactly which direction we were all moving, because the report, which is extremely well done and thorough, is more of a big picture strategic plan, the way it took me a while to figure this out, but it's more of a strategic plan. But the ordinances we have in front of us are simply what we're doing tonight, and it is not reflective of everything that's in that report. It's very narrow. So that's why I was trying to be so specific, to be clear to the people at home and anybody else of exactly what we're voting on. So anyway, anybody else have any, Councilor Todd?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, I want to add to what you just said, and I think Mr. Walsh stated as well that this is really a starting point, and that was, I think, the intention, being a member of the parking committee. If I can say this, that was the intention of the group, was to have a starting point that we could build on. And if, in fact, along the way we saw particular pieces that were not working properly, well, then those could be amended, and we could add to it. So this is still, I think, a work in progress, but we do need to start somewhere. The whole point of this project, as I see it, was to continue with transparency, government transparency, because we have a parking fund, and in order for folks to figure out which monies are going into it, which are revenues, which are expenditures, which relate to parking, that's the easiest way for folks to understand that concept and to get that information, is to have a designated parking fund. Beyond that, I would hope that folks aren't too worried or nervous about fees going up. We also tried to strike a balance with that. I heard from a lot of folks, and we got a lot of public testimony, that some folks really do not want to see their taxes go up. So then there's a concern about the general fund. But then we have another group of folks who, I don't care what happens to my taxes, don't raise the fees. So we needed to, on the parking committee, find a way to strike a balance between those. And I think Councilor Cohn, our chair, said all the rest very eloquently earlier about the work that the committee did. And I want to thank Mr. Walsh for his excellent work as well, and a very well done report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll tell you what, if I'm going to go first, and then you fill in wherever I miss. How's that?
Thank you.
Okay. So I just want to make, so just to go through real quick, and Mr. Walsh, correct me if I'm wrong. So the big ticket items within this particular resolution, there are three of them. The first one we're dealing with, the first thing that people will want to definitely pay attention to is in the Store Street, School, and State Street garages, as well as for those three, the hours of operation would change from 8 to 5 to 9 to 7, correct? Hills Ave lot, Library parking lot, Prince Ave, they go from 2-hour parkings to 10-hour parkings, right? The next big ticket item would be Saturday would be metered from now on. It would go from 9 a.m. to 7 a.m. on 7 p.m. excuse me, on Saturdays. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The next big thing is this is really exciting. If you park in the garage, you get to back into your spaces where you can't back into them now. Huh?
That is correct.
That's thrilling. Okay. The next big ticket item is that it would go from 75 cents an hour to $1 an hour on the on-street meter space and kiosk. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The next big issue would be, those are probably, and then of course the Schedule X, which is the street changes, the on-street meter spaces that we're talking about, correct?
That's correct. It would be the meter time limits on street, 3 hours versus 10 hours as compared to what it is today. That is correct.
And would you say those are majority of them?
You got them all.
Okay. Councilors.
Thank you, Your Honor. I also want to take the time to recognize the time and energy, both the Parking Committee and then the exceptional time and energy Mr. Walsh put into this. It's been a good couple of years that unfortunately he's had to spend way too much time on this. And then also, unfortunately, I find myself in a position where I'm not able to support this. And the reason is because I don't think the balance between user fee and taxpayer funded is the correct balance. I feel that more of an effort should be made for the fund to be able to sustain itself. When we look at liabilities for the parking fund, they're fairly significant. We have over $4 million of repairs at the School Street garage, the old Durgan Block garage. I believe the city has a liability of about $3 million. I also look at that the city, we as a city still support a change in a state statute that would allow for a registration surcharge on automobile registrations that will go to pay for maintenance and upkeep of the garages and the meters. Understanding that and understanding that the TIF district are contributing a significant amount, I believe around $350,000+ a year, and understanding that TIF money is tax money, and that tax money not only comes from the city, but also that tax money comes from the school, county, and state. Without more of a shift in parking fees to help sustain the parking fund, without general fund revenue that people from from people that don't use the parking in downtown, I will not be able to support this. But again, I can't stress enough the time and energy that was put into this by both our staff and the Parking Committee, and they should be commended for a great effort. And I just find myself in a position not being able to support the end result. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Would you be willing to answer a question? Would you be willing to answer a question?
I don't believe I asked a question.
No, I said, would you be willing to answer a question?
Answer.
Oh, certainly.
So I just want to, I appreciate your comments. You're opposed to the overall report, and I think you articulated the reasons I understand. But in terms of what is before us tonight, I guess, so are you opposed to changing the times from 8 to 5 to 9 to 7?
So are we going,
I'm going to take you through them and ask you every single one of these, because I want to understand what in this resolution is that you're opposed to.
I'm opposed to the biggest opposition I have is the fees for the parking garage, and.
Okay, got it. Got it. So section B of the, got it.
It's
But do you like, for instance, on the Hills Ave lot, would you oppose going from 2 hours to 10 hours?
No, let me make this easy. My opposition is to what I consider a lack of revenue being generated, not any of the other specific changes and those sorts of things.
So you would increase you think these fees are too low?
I think the increase for the parking garages is too low. I also believe that the initial, I think about a year or so ago, maybe a little over a year ago, the recommendation came from staff for about $1.75 an hour. I thought that was a bit of a shock, but I think $1.25 on street and 75 cents would have a significant impact on reducing the outside revenue that would need to sustain the parking fund, and that would go a long way in being able to utilize those funds for citywide projects and school district costs throughout the city, as opposed to just being taken and used for the parking fund. So that's my, many of the specifics I think are a step in the right direction. We could argue a little bit about where parking meters should or shouldn't go, and
I got you. I just was trying to understand, just they're
but
too
the
low
issue-
and you'd rather have.
The big issue I have
got it.
is the
Got
fee
it.
structure.
Got it. Anyone else? We do have a motion before us. Motion is to approve this resolution. Motion has been seconded several different times. Is there any further discussion? Okay, let's have a roll call vote on this. I vote aye.
Counselor Champlin?
Aye.
Counselor Cohen?
Aye.
Counselor Grady Sexton? Aye. Counselor Hirschlag?
No.
Counselor Keach?
Aye.
Counselor Kinnison?
Yes.
Counselor Kretovic?
Aye.
Counselor Mattson?
Aye.
Counselor St. Hilaire?
Yes.
Counselor Todd?
Yes.
And Counselor Werner?
Aye.
Have you received the necessary amendments, Bouchard?
I'm so sorry, I saved the best for last. Counselor Bouchard? Yes. So 13.
Have received 1301, the motion is adopted.
12-1, sorry.
Have received the necessary majority, the motion is adopted. Okay, Madam Clerk, that takes us to item 22, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, Article 1-5, Fees, Fines, and Penalties.
Thank you. Is there... For approval? Motion made and seconded to approve this resolution. Is there any discussion? I hope you don't mind. I just want to do this as like I did the last one and see if I capture the essence of this particular ordinance as well. Major changes are once again, the parking meter is going from 75 cents to $1 on the kiosks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The permit if you go to use a permit for a whole day, it goes from $10 to $15. Correct?
Your Honor. Yes.
There are several in the chart, but I think probably the one that probably stands out the most would be the expired meter fee, fine that is, goes from the existing $10 to a proposed of $15.
Correct.
The others are the no parking zone, the reserve space, not within the lines, those type of things, correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Anything that's bold and italicized in that table, correct.
And those would be probably the major highlights of this particular one?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Anybody have any discussion? Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just would like to point out, in light of, especially of Councilor Hirschlag's comments earlier about his feeling that the fees were not quite high enough in the parking garage and on the streets. We actually had a similar discussion with regard to the penalty fees. And I know that Your Honor, in fact, was also part of those discussions and was very helpful. The thought really with a lot of these fees that are going up was to try to not make them too onerous or too hard of a hit initially. And if we look forward, the recommendation, although certainly not binding, but the recommendation of the parking committee that's also in the report is to revisit these fees more frequently than has been in the past. So the concept, therefore, is that you can look ahead and see when this will come up again, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever that period of time might be, and have additional chance for public input, see what's working, what's not working at that point. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just so everyone understands, I'm going to vote no on this one. My specific issue is with the expired meter. I have said consistently that I think that it's not necessary to raise the expired meter fee from the $10. You work downtown, you walk around downtown, you oftentimes see those red stickers. You'll see people with boots on their car. That is not something I think the city does lightly and doesn't want to do. But, you know, we do have a workforce downtown, which sometimes they don't always make the best choices and where to park. They probably could make better choices. But, you know, these are significant penalties. They add up very, very quickly. It is not uncommon that, you know, that $10 fine turns into 20 after, was it 5 business days?
It's 10 and 20 business days, Your Honor, yes.
10
Yeah.
business days. It escalates pretty darn quick, and if you're, if you're a server downtown and you get a ticket and you're working, I'm not going to make excuses for not paying them. I'm just saying to you, these are real numbers, folks. And I know that it's a deterrent to try to encourage them to get people to pay. I just don't always necessarily think that it works that way. So just telling you how I feel, and I've tried to be consistent about that, but the committee didn't quite see it differently. They saw it differently, and that's their prerogative. So anyone else? Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to vote for this, and one of the issues that you just talked about was what it's also supposed to do is keep people from making a conscientious decision of getting tickets because they find it's value-wise, it's worth paying a ticket at the current rate than it is paying for the meters. As far as personnel that work downtown, part of the concept of the parking garages and the service garages in the downtown area staying at 50 cents an hour is to make it affordable for people that do work downtown, the service industries, that they have an opportunity to park in those areas, and also it eliminates the chances for them to get a ticket because of the hours that's available, that 10 hours or so available for parking there. So that's why I'm going to vote for this. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Councilor Slick.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is for the manager. I spoke to about a month or so ago about the confusion on the parking tickets about I was wondering if there were two different
Yes, thank you for bringing that to our attention, Councilor Hirschlag. There was
perhaps you could explain what the confusion is, because I get them and I'm not confused. It says right there how much I owe.
I'm only aware of it because I got a parking ticket. There were two different time frames which explained on the parking ticket, one on the front, one on the back, that were not similar as to when you needed to pay the parking ticket in order to avoid the doubling of the fine. I'll let Mr. Walsh explain the specifics.
Long story short, members of the council, the front side of the ticket had either business days or calendar days, and the back side of the ticket had the opposite of whatever the front said. And the issue is there was a glitch in the field of how much text you could have on one side of the ticket. That's been addressed by Mr. Florence in the parking division. So when your tickets get issued, moving forward, you'll have consistent language, which is what the ordinance is, which is business days.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, ready for the question? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Nay. And the motion is adopted. Okay, Madam Clerk, take some item 23, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title II Traffic Code, Chapter 18 Parking, Article 18-2 Restricted Residential Parking Areas.
Okay.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. So instead of me trying to guess, why don't you just do the...
Want me to do the narrative?
Not guessing, try to meet it. So bottom line, this is where your residential parking permit.
It is, and all this language does is simply clean up the existing ordinance that we have for the area that's around the UNH Law School. There are 4 streets there that are affected. Essex, Perry, Rowland, and I knew I was going to miss the last one. Thank you, Blanchard. And it just simply establishes that we are now going to require annual renewal on these. We haven't been doing that in the past. It affects a relatively small number of properties. My recollection is that there are 40 properties that are on these 4 streets with about 61 dwelling units. And we will work with those folks closely moving forward. So that's all this does. It simply requires annual renewal and creates parameters and gives the manager authority to create rules to actually operate the program.
So just to clarify, we had people from the White Park area came to the parking committee. They spoke out and said what their concerns about expanding, which was the original, I think, recommendation. That was pared back, and this only applies to the existing.
That is correct. We are not establishing or expanding any new resident parking areas. We're sticking with the 4 streets that we have right now.
Thank you. So there'll be no calls tomorrow because that would be perfectly clear that there's not expanding, and everybody who came will understand that it's not them.
I can't see Caitlin Andrews, but she should be looking at you right now nodding.
I'm hoping. All right. Is there any further discussion on this particular item?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just also want to, just for the record, state, although I support this, back to my earlier argument before, that just because I'm voting for the permits doesn't also mean that I support the addition of the zones. And I'm saying that because it's obvious to us, but 2 years from now, they'll say, well, didn't you approve the report, which also has this? Because by voting yes, I'm approving the report. And although I disagree with that section of the report, I'm really, in my mind, approving the ordinance. But just want that
That's
stated
why
for
I've
the
been trying to
record.
go through these very specifically.
And I appreciate that, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, with that, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, and the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 24, please.
It's a resolution determining the proposed project has a public benefit and approving an application by South Pleasant Street LLC for a 6-year RSA 79E Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive for the renovation of real estate located at 5 through 7 South State Street.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion? Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Councilor Schleich.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to be voting against this for some of the reasons I stated earlier. But we're looking at a project or projects that exceed $4 million, come to close to $5 million in improvements. I find it difficult to understand that they're not going to be able to pay approximately $65,000 a year in taxes. And that comes out, we're looking at about a little under $371,000 a year. I would have thought that a company with this much experience would have known what the financial landscape would look like, and perhaps had offered maybe $370,000 less on the purchase price, as opposed to asking city taxpayers to pick up the tab for them for another 6 years. It's also important to remind people that this is also in a TIF district. So not only isn't the city getting any of the funds, but we're extending the time frame or where money in the TIF district won't be available to pay for citywide services and for school services. And for those reasons and the reasons that I spoke about earlier, I think an extraordinary, so let me just go back a little bit. I understand that they met many of the requirements for 79E, but the city has no obligation to grant that tax abatement. I think in extraordinary circumstances where we have the opportunity to be certain that a project can't move forward and it's of great benefit to the city, that we should very carefully look at that type of project and see if 79E makes sense. We haven't seen the pro forma. I don't know if it'd be the will of the council to go into a non-public session to review that, but without seeing the pro formas, with understanding the breadth of their businesses, I just feel that they have other avenues to move forward with this project. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Councilor Cohen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Several years ago, the council looked at this and we passed the 79E. And the reasoning for it at that time was that we were looking for development in the downtown area and redevelopment in buildings. And that was the focus why we passed it. That's why I passed it, is to encourage development in the downtown area and also in Pinnacook, because we did that in Pinnacook. And there was one project in Pinnacook at the time, in the sense of a modest project. So I was excited about this project coming to Concord. And as the gentleman explained, that the 79E was one key aspect of it. Also, the downtown project certainly was a large part of it. And I think the basic thing that what I understand, and you guys can correct me on this, is that the taxes are not going down on this property. The taxes will be at the same level as it is today. And it's what it is 6 years from now. We'll recoup those taxes. And so to me, it's an investment that we as a council and the city's doing into this property so that we will benefit 6 years or several years later from it. And what I found is the years go by very quickly, so we'll get this. So I think this is an incredible opportunity that we're increasing value of property downtown. It's rehabbing buildings. It's, you know, I mean, there's so many things that we want to do for the city and have the opportunity. So there's housing, workforce housing downtown. You know, it's just so good of a project and other projects that we're meeting for. So it's to be almost critical of a project that could be successful because of this 79E project is to me is very negative, and it's not a good sign to be critical of the project. The tax abatement's working. It's not abatement. The tax incentive is working for us. So that's why I'm more than happy to vote for this.
You know, Councilor Todd and Councilor Quaterback.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Councilor Cohen's comments. I think that every project like this that does meet the qualifications that we can approve and accept is one of the many building blocks that we can utilize to create the vision that we want for our community, which includes long-term economic gain and tax savings to residents. If we don't start on this kind of path, if we don't have tools such as 79E available to us, I think we heard from the developers here tonight, they can go to any community they want. So we need to have
motion.
Thank you. Councilor Champlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to make it brief. To vote against this motion, or to refuse to use the 79E strategy that we adopted, is to adopt a strategy that is intended to grow the economy downtown, to improve the infrastructure downtown, and then at the last minute decide, no, that was a bad strategy to adopt. I think it was a good strategy to adopt to Councilor Cohen's point, to Councilor Todd's point, to Councilor Kretovich's point, so I'll be voting in favor of it.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just want to add. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to agree and concur with my colleagues. I will be voting for this. These are exactly the kind of investments that we need to be making. And I look forward to more and more opportunities like this. And we need to support these kinds of activities and the developers of these projects coming into the city. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Slade.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's not that I don't believe that it's a valuable tool. I strongly supported using 79E for the Old Vegas block, the Remy project, because I thought that was a valuable building to save and that the resources weren't there without 79E. I'm not convinced that that's the case here. Further, because I'm voting against this doesn't mean that I'm against the renovating and the redevelopment of our downtown. And thirdly, I'd like to point out that it's my understanding that the intent of a TIF district is to set the stage to spur development. I think the TIF district has done that, and I don't know how much more the community, the taxpayers of the community, should continue to contribute once the district has shown itself to be successful. Again, I would point to it's not our responsibility to ensure that a developer doesn't overpay for a project and isn't able to go forward with it. And it's not on whether I receive some development downtown. I think the taxpayers of the city have contributed a significant amount to ensure that occurs, I think that at this juncture, I believe that this project has the possibility to go forward without further contributions from the taxpayer. I'd be happy to be shown that I'm not correct here. If the council would like to go into a non-public session and review the pro forma that was provided to the city administration by the developer. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just wanted to share a couple last thoughts. I think there's been some comments made tonight that I don't think reflect that are all that accurate. For instance, there's been comments tonight that this is a subsidy, that this is an abatement. And if you think about abatement, it means basically to reduce something or to lessen something. And I think it's important that the taxpayers of this community understand that nothing is being reduced, nothing is being lessened. There is simply being frozen at the existing assessed value. And that's what the owner or developer will continue to pay taxes on based what is currently being paid. There's no reduction from that. Now, there'll be a time certain, if we so choose to move forward with this, just as we did with the previous 6 applications that we approved, 2008, 2 in 2009, 2 in 2012, and 1 in 2014. So I think we've been very careful at how we have taken on 79E. We have not just granted it simply willy-nilly. There has been a lot of thought in how this happens. I think of the 6 that have been granted thus far, 5 of which have now been increased to the new higher assessed value because of the successful project that actually happened. There's only one, the last one, the Remy block, that was done in 2014. It was granted for 5 years, is the only one remaining outstanding, and soon that will become on to the new assessed value. And I think it's the long-term benefit is an absolute what this community is looking for. When we talk about economic development, this is exactly what we're hoping to occur, is the expanded tax base. But the last thing I really wanted to drive home is this idea that, about seeing the pro forma. Of the 6 that we approved in the past, the city has seen those pro formas. Now, have I personally seen those pro formas? No. But has the city administration, has Mr. Espel, has Mr. Walsh, has Mr. LeBron, has Mr. Maia, have they seen those? Have they reviewed those financials? Yes, they have. And those are the professionals that we pay in the city to do that job. I am very confident, as I was with the previous 6 that we approved, that based on the recommendations, that based on how they've looked at the pro formas, that and given their recommendation, that I'm confident that there was a need to move forward with this, because I am extremely confident that none of those individuals which I named would ever recommend going forth with something if they saw that it was not necessary to do so. So I do feel confident that our administrative team is an outstanding group of individuals who have absolute confidence that they have reviewed the pro forma, and it's a good recommendation for the city. So I will support this. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, you ready for the vote? I apologize, I just took my notes. Okay. Let's do a roll call on this one. I vote yes.
Counselor Champlin?
Yes.
Counselor Cohen?
Yes.
Counselor Grady Sexton?
Yes.
Counselor Hirschlag?
No.
Counselor Keach?
Yes.
Counselor Kennison?
Yes.
Counselor Kritovic?
Yes.
Counselor Mattson?
Yes.
Counselor St. Hilaire?
Yes.
Counselor Todd?
Yes.
Counselor Werner?
Yes.
Counselor Bouchard?
Yes.
I received the necessary majority. The motion is adopted. Takes us to item 25, please.
It's a resolution determining the proposed project has a public benefit and approving an application by South Pleasant Street LLC for a 6-year RSA 79E Community Revitalization Tax Relief Incentive for the renovation of real estate located at 15 through 17 Pleasant Street.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
And the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 26, please.
It's an ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances, Title I, General Code, Chapter 1, Government Organization, amending Schedule 1 of Article 1-5, fees, fines, and penalties by amending the fee for Chapter 26, Building Code, Section 2616-4, Fire Prevention Schedule, Tents and Air-Supported Structures.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item 27, please.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to continue implementation of the revolving loan fund program and appropriating the sum of $260,586.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have received the necessary two-thirds. Motion is adopted. Item 28, please.
A resolution authorizing and appropriating the sum of $975,000 as a transfer to reserves.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Having received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Item 29, please.
A resolution appropriating the sum of $50,000 from reserves as a supplemental appropriation to the city's general fund for furniture, equipment purchase and replacement, and education and training.
Move approval.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, ready for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Having received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 30.
A resolution appropriating $51,000 from the Economic Development Reserve to fund the Public Information Officer position.
Move approval. Motion made, motion made and seconded twice to approve this item.
Been here.
Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Having necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 31, please.
A resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $11,133.46 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency.
Move approval. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Counselor Hirschlight.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm just, to be clear, this is an information officer position, as I understand it. I'm wondering if the lines are going to be blurred between economic development, who's, I believe is more concerned about marketing, and a public information officer. That
Counselor?
would be,
Counselor? We're actually on item 31.
oh, I'm sorry. Well, then I yield back.
Okay. We have a motion to approve item 31. We are on 31, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So was I.
Sorry. To read my own notes. Is there any discussion on item 31?
No.
Seeing none, ready for the vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Having received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 32, please.
A resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $24,053.78 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency.
Approval. Second.
Motion made, seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all ready for the question. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Having received necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 33, please.
A resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $27,270.92 in grant funds from the New Hampshire Highway Safety Agency.
Approval.
Second.
Motion made, seconded to approve this item. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Say nay. The ayes have it. Having received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 34, please.
A resolution authorizing and appropriating the sum of $93,490 for fiscal year 2018 operating expenses for the citywide community center.
Move approval.
Second. Motion made and seconded in tandem. Any discussion? Seeing none, all ready for the question, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Having received the necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. Madam Clerk, item 35, please.
A resolution accepting and appropriating the sum of $20,596 from the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation to support projects that enhance the special character and vitality of Concord.
Motion made and seconded.
Over there.
All together now.
There you go. Approval?
Second.
All right. Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Have received necessary two-thirds, the motion is adopted. That takes us to item 36, the reports, and we're going to take a 2-minute break. Recess. All right, welcome back.
Be honored.
Takes us to item 36, and the Honorable Madam Clerk informs me that we're missing the game. So with that,
Doesn't Fred have a score?
No, don't say the score.
I'm recording.
But I can't reveal it.
can you write it down and send it to me? All right. So, Madam Clerk, item 36.
A report from the Parks and Recreation Director on Terrell Park design plans.
Mr. Manager.
Members of the council, you have a report from Mr. Gill dated November 27th. You recall in fiscal year 2017 budget, you budgeted $125,000 for full design. We are currently at concept, and you actually have a picture of that in your report. And you can also see we also included a picture of the boardwalk, the proposed boardwalk. There's a couple of things that have occurred recently, though, that I think we need to pay attention to. I believe it was just last week, or in the last week or so, the city received a proposal for 2 turf fields with a bubble-type structure on Route 106, just as you coming into Concord on the right-hand side, on the east side, north of the Southcook. So there's a project in play there from the private sector, and you also may recall there is a lacrosse league that has expressed interest and discussed with City Council about building a lacrosse field down at Russ Martin Park. So, and they have also expressed interest in us in participating potentially with a project over at Terrell. So you have both of those items going on at this time. So what we were here to discuss tonight was, do you want us to move forward with a final design based on the project that you, I believe you have a picture of it, which we were here at the last council meeting or previous council meeting, and one of the concerns that came up from the design was the need for additional parking and overflow parking and some other changes to the plan. So we've actually done that as part of the concept plan, which you have dated October 2017. So 2 things we're looking for. Do you like that concept? And if you do like that concept, or does it need more changes? And if you do like that concept, do you want us to go to final design with it? Or would you prefer, because of these other items in play, to see how they play out before we decide whether or not to go forward and spend the rest of the money to come up with the final design of this plan?
Which pleasure. Councilor Craig.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the private sector's interest in building something on 106. The interest that I've always had with this project is what it does for the residents that are right here in this area of the city and not out at 106. We don't have a really good game field for this area of the population, and I think that this is really important in long-term goals for making that connection from Manchester Street over to Loudon Road along the Merrimack River Greenway Trail. And I think that 106 is going to be a great project without interfering with this.
Councilor Mattson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I would like to echo Councilor Kretovik's sentiments, but also to say that the location has been kind of a blight for such a long time that it's been important to us to put the work into it to develop it for the residents of the city as well as Ward 8, and to provide those opportunities for connections through future that Councilor Kretovik had mentioned. But the blight aspect is a larger one for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Bouchard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just want to echo previous 2 councilors. And also, I look at this park as a destination park for everyone in the city. I mean, it's the playground, the river walk, the dog park, and the multi-purpose fields. I feel this is like an area that's been blighted, and I just think this could be a crown jewel for the city, especially for people coming into the city. I mean, a lot of people now travel with their pets, especially their dogs, and another reason to pull off into Concord would be to use the dog park and then maybe go to Main Street and do some shopping. Once again, I'm happy the private sector is building some fields, but I think this is a park that will have something for everybody, even if you're not using the multi-use field. So I would like to go forward with this.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Your Honor. I also share the same sentiments of all the prior counselors. I like the new redesign that we have. But the second item that the manager mentioned is not necessarily something to shy away from, which is the private team looking to build an old field, but an opportunity because, speaking with the manager earlier today, there might be the opportunity for them to actually lease this field if we go first, and they may forego the construction of their field. I don't see them being able to perform their type of sport and activity in an indoor dome-type environment. This also provides some space for the school-age kids around town and Concord School District if they want to rent it from us as well. So I think we've got more opportunity now for income based on what the manager has told us.
Councilor Slick.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I'm on the right item this time. So in the beginning of the report, it talks about that without developing this parcel, that the Riverwalk Trail might not be used because it might not be safe. I'm not going to disagree with that, but I don't think we need to put in a $3 million turf field in order to make that area safe enough for people to utilize it. I will continue with my objections to this that I have stated previously, that we still don't have a facility plan for Memorial Field. And then we're looking at, when this is completed, a $4 million project. We don't know what the operating and maintenance costs will be going forward. We don't know what the revenue stream will be. I think we could do a very nice park there that would meet the needs of the community, give those folks in that area some very nice green space without going forward with a $3 million turf field that we don't know that if we went forward with this project would add for the next 20 years more than 0.5% to the tax rate every year, and that doesn't count operating and maintenance, and that doesn't count interest rates. So until I see a facility report from Memorial Field and until I see a plan that actually doesn't continue to add to the future costs of the community when other options can be explored, I will once again not be supporting this. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Manager?
Members of the council, so I'll try to address all the comments that came up. So there was a comment regarding the ability for other agencies or organizations to participate financially, and Council St. Hilaire is exactly correct on that. And also, we do believe there's grant-funded opportunities, whether we're going, the city does not have a fully inclusive playground facility. This could be a good location for something like that. There is also additional dollars out there for other aspects of this plan that we think they're available for grants. So we could take that approach. But in addition to exactly what Councilor St. Hilaire said, there are other organizations that have expressed interest in participating with us financially if we were to move ahead with a project like this. A project in this location would serve over 700 households that currently do not have walking access to a park. So this is really one of the most underserved areas in the entire city for this type of access, this type of facility. In terms of the reference to Memorial Field, I recall the Recreation Parks Advisory Committee that looked several years ago, I'm going to say 4 or 5 years ago, at the Memorial Field and made a determination that unless we were willing to disassemble the entire facility, meaning the football field, you cannot play lacrosse and you cannot, in a legitimate regulation field, or soccer at that facility. So therefore, to make something happen there, which would be fine, you would have to relocate or redo the track, which would also then cause you to redo the stands, which would also cause you to redo the softball fields and the other fields in that location. So it would really be a triggering of a whole redesign and reconstruction of Memorial Field. And I remember the discussion at that time, which was, if you're in it to do that and you're willing to put in, 8 figures, probably to make all of that happen and do it well. And you recall when the way we did it, and we did it right at White Park or White's Park or however it's pronounced now. We had to bring in, I'm going to say, 6 or 7 feet of fill to make that work. Well, Memorial Field was much worse of a situation than White Park. It was everywhere. So you can picture bringing in acres and acres of material to raise that up. If you're really going to make it worthwhile to do it, if you're really going to spend that amount of money. And that's when the Recreation Park Advisory Committee said, well, instead of focusing and putting all the assets of the community for recreation purposes in one place to serve essentially the high school, which uses it about 80% of the time, why don't we focus on doing a park master plan and doing other resources throughout the community? This would be one such a project. So I think everybody has a lot of really good points. I think there's an opportunity, if you do allow us to move forward and go with this project, we could bring back a lot of funding opportunities with other agencies to make this happen, to meet their needs and meet the community's need, without this being a multi-million-dollar project that goes on for years, all funded by the city taxpayers. I think there's other opportunities to partner with people, and we've done that successfully in the past. I hope that answers some of the questions.
Councilor Keach.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think this is also an opportunity, kind of a broader scope, to raise the question with the school district and suggest that they bear some responsibility for their fields and athletic fields and so forth. So if the city goes off in their direction to some degree, I think it'll put a little pressure on the school district to come up and pay their fair share of what they probably ought to have done over the years. So it's an opportunity to kind of get that discussion going as well.
Anyone else? All right, what's your pleasure?
Move to accept or?
Second.
Yes, second. Move forward.
Okay, motion's made to accept the report and approve the continue with the design for Taylor Park. That's the motion. Motion's been made and seconded. Now that we have a motion, is there any other discussion? Okay, ready for the vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. Okay, there's no new business. We're not ready for the unfinished business. Takes us to comments, requests. Anybody have anything they'd like to share? Wow, okay. Ms. Manager, anything you have?
No, sir.
We have 2 suspense items. Can I get a motion to take up suspend the rules and take up both of the items?
So moved.
Motion made and seconded to take up both suspense 1 and 2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, item suspense 1, please.
It's listed as a referral to the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee. It's a communication from Councilor Mattson on behalf of a constituent requesting safety procedures be considered relative to the parking of delivery vehicles on Main Street in relation to pedestrians and crosswalks.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
I'm sorry, you're reading. You forgot that after.
Got it. Okay, well, motion's made and seconded to refer this to the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Madam Clerk, suspense 2, please.
It's also listed as a referral to the Transportation Policy Advisory Committee. It's a communication from Councilor Champlin requesting that consideration be given to the installation of children at play or slow children signage on Chapel Street in Concord.
Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the sign. Can I just ask a question? I thought we didn't do these signs anymore.
Yeah. I was going to recommend we actually send it to traffic operations first before it goes to TPAC, because they would look at the, what the parameters are for signing.
I'd support that.
Mr. Baye, is this more appropriate to go to Traffic Operations or Traffic Policy Advisory Committee? Or do we not do these signs at all anymore anyway?
Past practice recently, well, several years, has been to discourage these types of signs, because what we found from studies is that people over time just forget about the signs. They become white noise and are disregarded, and they create a false sense of security to the people in the neighborhood.
Okay, the second half of the question is, if you're going to refer, where's the appropriate body to send it to?
defer the engineer traffic ops. Yeah, so I concur with Councilor Kretovic.
It allows the fire, police to weigh in before TPAC does.
Who made the motion?
Counselor Cohen.
Council Cohen, would you prefer this go to traffic operations?
Certainly.
Sure. Okay. Motion made and seconded to refer this to traffic operations. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. And the ayes have it. That takes us to the end of our business this evening. I do have one other I didn't bring up in our comments, but just wanted to get your input. So we have handled this several different ways over the years. Seems like forever ago, but we did have an election back about a month or so ago.
100%.
There you go. And so we've handled this a couple different ways. We have met the first Monday of the month, and we've done a little kind of inaugural type swearing-in ceremony, and then we met the following Monday for our regular scheduled Monday meeting. The first Monday is like the first New Year's Day or something like that. So we'd end up having to meet the second if we were going to do it. I would propose, if for your consideration, that we not do a kind of inaugural swearing in someone, that we simply come in at 6:30 on January 8th, which is our regular scheduled city council meeting. And that way, by just starting half an hour earlier, we can save ourselves a meeting for the first week in January. And the other reason is, if you look around the table, it's going to be the exact same faces. There are no new faces around the table. So I encourage you to invite your families for the 6:30 meeting, but there's no need to do new pictures. Everybody still looks as...
They look better now.
Than they did 2
Good
years
answer,
ago.
Sean.
So I wasn't going to propose that the pictures or the board be changed, leave it the same. And it still looks like I have hair in that one, so that one. And but we'll do the swearing in. We'll do the swearing in at 6:30. Does that work for everybody, or?
Sure.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. With that, then, Madam Clerk, if you could notice the 6:30 meeting for swearing in, and then the 7 o'clock regular scheduled city council meeting. Okay. Anybody else have anything, Mr. Manager?
No, sir.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem moves we adjourn, seconded by Council Bouchard. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And the ayes have it. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful holiday.